Okay, so I'm in this hotel and it's really bad. The wireless is just really slow. So it cut my video off in the middle of it. So I don't know what point you caught me. So hopefully y'all get back on here. I was just warming up. But talking about the Devil Wears Prada's character, Miranda Priestley, and how she was, for me, a an image of power. And the thing that I liked about Miranda, I loved her fashion. You know, y'all know I'm all about the fashion, all about uh, the clothes, the bling, whatever, and the look. But the thing I admired about her was she had power, right? And so, because I had not developed my own true leadership identity, and because I hadn't really understood that leadership comes from influence and building relationships, and um, not through just sheer force. I looked to Miranda Priestley as a model of what power and authority looked like. And so that's kind of how I showed up at work. Now, it wasn't that bad, but in terms of um, really not being empathetic and not truly embracing what it meant to be kind in the course of correction, to be kind in the course of direction, and and the biggest issue was emotional intelligence. And here's one thing that's very important to understand about bullies is that, particularly those in the workplace, they lack emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has to do with understanding the impact of your emotions on other people. And I'll just say, for me, I have a very, very, very bad temper. Always had it. I inherited that. My dad has a bad temper. I got a bad temper. And so a bad temper is simply, and I don't say this to discount it, but what it is an inability to manage anger under pressure, right? And so rather than dealing with anger in a positive way, it's kind of this explosion. And so that has always, it remains a challenge of mine. I have learned how to control it, and I've learned how to um, do things that help me to contain the feelings of anger, and to not explode, but rather to just simmer. Some activities that I do, what do you call it, self-soothing activities, so that anger doesn't come out, because it's detrimental in a lot on a lot of different scales to not be in control of that emotion. But emotional intelligence, again, is understanding uh, that just because you're angry doesn't mean that you can take that anger out on somebody else. Just because you're having a bad day doesn't mean you can't that you can take that bad day out and ruin everybody else's day. But bully reformation boils down to exhibiting a high level of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence begins again with that empathy, well, self-awareness. It begins with self-awareness. Understanding that, hey, I have an issue with this emotion, whether it is anger, whether it is fear, whether it is sadness, frustration, a feeling of powerlessness. And many times when people feel powerless or helpless, or they feel angry about a situation or frustrated, unless they are even first aware that they're feeling that way, then they're not going to be able to deal with it in a positive way. So that's the first level of bully reformation, if you will, is that self-awareness, to realize, I have an anger management issue. I have when I get frustrated, I raise my voice, or when I get frustrated, I cry. However those emotions manifest, because emotion itself, anger is in and of itself is not a negative emotion. Let's be clear, because it is natural to feel anger. It means you're human, all right? So it's not that the emotion itself is negative. It's how the emotion manifests. The behavior and actions that the behavior manifests in is where it is negative, okay? So we have to recognize the negative behaviors and actions that are the result of the real emotions that we feel when we're fearful, when we're afraid, when we feel helpless, when we feel powerless, when we feel denied, okay? All of these natural emotions that we feel are always going to have some type of reaction or cause some type of reaction. And so it is important for adults and children, but I'm talking about leaders, bullies in the workplace. It is important for people to recognize that when I feel this way, this is the result that happens. And so the second thing is, once you have that self-awareness, is to act on the empathy, to recognize specifically what is the emotion, what is the effect of this emotion on others. And like for me, for many years, I failed to appreciate that when I was having a bad day because of something going on in my life, that it caused my team to feel intimidated, or it caused my team to feel afraid because they didn't know what I was going to do, right? And I was never going to hurt anybody, okay? So I never, was never going to physically threaten anybody or never going to do anything to anybody. But I just wasn't very pleasant to be around. And if you can imagine being in a work environment where your leader is just being all stank, that doesn't make for a pleasant work environment. So for many years, I was unaware of the impact that my stuff, my ish, right, had on my team. Even though, hopefully I don't get cut off again. I get a phone call. It keeps coming in when I do my broadcast. But anyway, even though nothing that I was feeling was directed at my team, they got the force of it. And so the second thing about bully reformation is recognizing the impact that you have on other people. And then the third thing that's important for bully reformation is being able to learn positive coping mechanisms for the natural feelings that we are all going to experience. We are all going to be afraid. We're all going to be frustrated. We're all going to be, at some point, feel powerless, feel denied, feel angry, feel whatever. But then being able to deal with that in a way that doesn't have a negative effect on others. So when I know that I'm feeling frustrated, rather than raising my voice, then I have now developed the skill of lowering my voice, being purposefully at peace in a moment of storminess. And that's what we have to do is, audio? Or what audio, I wonder, is coming in from the beginning? That's weird. Okay, because of course I can't hear it. But if you're having trouble hearing me, let me know. And Dawn, I don't know what that is, and I don't know what's coming through because none of my other devices are on. But if you're having trouble hearing me, let me know. But I may just have to re-record this one. But I'm talking over me. That's weird. I wonder if I'm getting a feedback or something. It's just really crazy. So anyway, I apologize if you're having difficulty with the audio. I'll go back and listen to it and see what I can do to fix it. Or I just may re-record it and upload it. Okay, it's at the very beginning. Yeah, and I think that's because maybe a call was coming through. So if you can hear me now, just let me know. But thank you so much. So again, we have to be aware of how we feel and then be deliberate of ensuring that we're taking actions to deal with our own issues. So if you know that you have a hot temper, hot tempers just don't come out of anywhere. You feel it. You know what's about to come. You know you're getting frustrated. And so what you have to do is to be deliberate and act upon it. Because as leaders, it's one thing to know what your shortcomings are. It's another thing to act upon that. And it is irresponsible to know that you have an issue that is negatively influencing, impacting other people, and you just like whatever. Because it's irresponsible to say, oh, that's just the way I am. No, it's not just the way you are, and it's not okay to just be like that, okay? So it's, as a leader in the workplace and in the marketplace, when you know that there are certain things about you that will cause you to be a bully in the workplace, you know, then you have a responsibility to act on that. And another thing that many times manifests in situations with bullies is when they don't have control at home, but they have control at work. So they overcompensate for that power that they feel. Oh, that is weird. Oh, you know why? I think I know why it's doing that, because I was unable to disconnect. I think my other face, I got disconnected. This is actually part 2. And I think the other broadcast is still going because I couldn't hit the finish button. Anyway, so I may just have to re-record this one. So I appreciate y'all bearing with me. And hopefully you can understand me enough to get the gist of it. But I'll go back and listen to it and try to fix what I can. But the important thing, again, is to just be cognizant and to act upon it. And if you know that you have issues at home that are showing up when you get to work, as a leader, you have a responsibility to deal with that, because it's nobody else's fault what's going on with you at home, what you don't have, what your significant other is doing or is not doing, you know, your upbringing and all of that. Those things are influences on you, but they shouldn't be influences on other people. So as leaders in the workplace, when we recognize our shortcomings, we have a responsibility to act upon them. So I'm going to close out because I think I'm having some issues. And again, I may have to go back and re-record some things. But I do want to be sure that you know that if you are a bully, you can be reformed. And if you're dealing with a bully, there's hope for them. And many times it's self-awareness. And I'll tell you what was the pivotal point for me. I had a team member who was brave enough to tell me, you're acting unprofessional. You're being unprofessional. And when she said that to me, it hurt my feelings. Oh, it hurt my feelings just some awful. But fortunately, by the grace of God, I had enough courage to learn more, act on that, and to commit to changing. And so many times if you're dealing with a bully in the workplace, it does take some courage to come forth and say, you know what, I don't know that you realize this, but when you are frustrated, you are condescending to other people, or you raise your voice. Do you realize, because a lot of people don't realize that when, for example, they get upset about something, that they raise their voices, right? So when I get frustrated, for me, not only does my voice raise, but I tend to talk very shortly. And and it sounds like I'm fussing at people. I'm not fussing at anyone as much as I'm fussing, but that doesn't mean that it's okay for that to continue. So I have to be aware of that. So if you're dealing with a bully, you have to sometimes just bring some awareness to the situation because sometimes they don't recognize it. And if you think about you in your situation, many times you are oblivious to many of the behaviors, actions, things that you do because you're not sitting around looking at you, right? So if you're on the other hand of that and there's someone who you're working with and you don't like the way they treat you, you need to tell them. And if it's your supervisor, obviously, if it's your supervisor, a client, a huge influence in your industry, it may be a little bit more difficult to have that conversation, but they need the conversation as much as you do. Because like I say, many times they're not even aware of it. Now, what they do with it is their responsibility. Some people can handle it, some people can't. And it's a choice you have to make, because it all boils down to your choices. And when you are faced with situations that impact you negatively, you have a choice as to whether or not you are going to negatively impact someone else simply because you're feeling this way. And I'll say this, regardless of what position you're in an organization, in your own business, in a community organization, a nonprofit, whatever the situation is, you do not have the right to make other people feel bad. You do not have the right to make someone else feel less than simply because that's the way you feel. You need to deal with that issue yourself and not project that onto other people. So, I just want to close out part 4 of the 5-part series, Mean Girls Grow Up to Be Mean Women and Mean CEOs. Part 4 is focusing on bully reformation. And just to say that, if it is something that you're experiencing or other people are experiencing, it begins with self-awareness. It then is followed up with a recognition of the impact that your actions, your behaviors are having on others, and then the responsibility to act upon what you know and to change. Okay? And many times, if it's you have to make that personal decision. If it's someone you work with, then you can be their accountability partner and help them to get through that. And as a business leader, as a business coach, as a leadership coach, this, of course, is something that I've dealt with myself personally, but am skilled at helping others with. So if you are a bully or need help in dealing with one, please text me at 228-238-7997. Again, that's 228-238-7997. And say, I want to be reformed. I want to be reformed. Seriously, there are tools and strategies that any leader can use to become more self-aware of how they lead, and then to work through what they know to change their behaviors and actions to be better leaders. Because remember, you are a better leader not because of your authority or because of your position or your title, but because of your ability to inspire people through the relationships that you build and cultivate with them every day. So this has been Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes bringing you part 4 of the 5-part series, Mean Girls Grow Up to Be Mean Women and Mean CEOs. And I look forward to connecting with you next time on part 5, where I am going to actually discuss some strategies that you can use when you encounter mean girls, those mean CEOs in the workplace and the marketplace. So it has been my pleasure, and I look forward to connecting with you in the last part of this 5-part series. And again, if you need some coaching around bully reformation for yourself or for dealing with it with someone else, please text me 228-238-7997. Or if there's something that you want me to address specifically in the last series or the last part of this series, I would be happy to do so. So thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you in the last part of this series. See you later. Bye-bye.